Photo by freeimages.com/Christian Hofer. Note: the day this was published, H.R. 2796, a U.S. congressional bill that would legally redefine man and woman based on an individual's genetic sex as a means to roll back transgender rights, started to garner news. While this essay was not intended to address that bill specifically, it thoroughly undermines its logical, legal, and scientific standing. I recently penned an essay entitled "Debunking Trans Women Are Not Women" arguments in the hopes that it would be a useful primer for countering such claims. But sometimes, efforts to undermine or exclude trans women rely on a somewhat different tactic, which takes the following form: a case will be made that sex is distinct from gender, the former being purely biological in nature, the latter being entirely social. Upon making this claim, it will then be argued that, while trans women may indeed be women, because woman is a gender category, we nevertheless remain biologically male, a sex category. This line of reasoning is often accompanied by claims that women are oppressed because of their sex, not gender, and therefore feminism should be exclusively for biological females, thereby expunging trans women. While this is not a new argument, it has garnered increased attention after Lacey Green, a popular YouTube personality, recently forwarded it in a series of videos and comments. Since social media is actively reacting to Green's comments and similar claims made by others, I thought that this would be an opportune time to debunk this "trans women are biological males" argument, as well as misconceptions about biological sex more generally. Before I begin, I should mention that I am writing this piece, not only as a trans woman and feminist but also as a biologist. Many of the points that I make here were argued more thoroughly in my books Whipping Girl and Excluded. Sex is multifaceted, variable, and somewhat malleable. The primary assumption driving most biological sex myths is that there are two discrete, mutually exclusive sexes that are immutable, i.e., once born into a sex, you will always be a member of that sex. While there are a number of sexually dimorphic traits, such as chromosomes, gonads, external genitals, other reproductive organs, ratio of sex hormones, and secondary sex characteristics, many times these traits do not all align, i.e., all male, or all female, within the same person, as is the case for intersex and many transgender people. Also, for each of these different sexually dimorphic traits, some people's anatomies will fall in between, or outside of what most people consider to be standard for female or male. So in other words, the term sex is neither simple nor straightforward. It refers to a collection of sexually dimorphic traits that are variable both across traits and within each trait. And this is not merely a trans perspective on the matter. Here is an article from Nature, one of the most respected science journals, arguing that the idea of two sexes is simplistic. Biologists now think there is a wider spectrum than that. In addition to this natural diversity, sex is not entirely immutable. Sure, we may not be able to change our genetic sex, which for most of us remains yet to be determined, as relatively few people ever have their chromosomes examined, and some who do receive unexpected results. But reproductive organs may be removed or reconfigured via surgery. And sex hormones can be administered, as they often are, for both transgender and cisgender people, and they may alter our secondary sex characteristics, i.e., sexually dimorphic traits that arise during puberty, such as breast development in females, and facial hair growth in males. People tend to harbor essentialist beliefs about sex, that is, they presume that each sex category has an underlying essence that makes them what they are. This is what leads people to assume that trans women remain biologically male, despite the fact that many of our sex characteristics are now female. However, there is no essence underlying sex, it is simply a collection of sexually dimorphic traits. Some people will presume that sex chromosomes must be this essence, even though we cannot readily see them, plus there are non-XX or XY variants. Others presume that genitals are this essence, probably because they are used to determine our birth-assigned and legal sex, although they can vary too, and may eventually change, e.g., if one undergoes sex reassignment surgery. In day-to-day life, we primarily rely on secondary sex characteristics to determine, or more precisely, presume, what sex a person is, and of course, these traits may change via a simple hormone prescription. Like I said, there is no mystical essence underlying sex. Sex is a collection of traits that, while generally dimorphic, can vary greatly in the population, and some can change over time. While the terms male and female have some utility, we should not view them as strictly dichotomous or mutually exclusive. Rather, female and male are best thought of as umbrella terms that describe groupings of people or animals who generally share many of the same traits, albeit with considerable variability and some exceptions. The mind-body dualism phallicized gender. Sex distinction is rooted in mind-body dualism, which was once commonly accepted, but has since been rejected by contemporary biologists, cognitive scientists, philosophers, and psychologists, as well as many feminists, for the mind, which, in the case of trans women, would include our gender identities and lived experiences moving through the world as women, to be entirely separate from one's body. The following two things must both be true. 1. Our brains must be completely unsexed, and 2. Our social gender should not at all impact or influence our biology. For starters, every single nerve cell in our brains has sex hormone receptors, which turn genes on or off in response to sex hormones such as testosterone or estrogen. None of us can say precisely what effects these hormones elicit in our brains. There is obviously a lot of gender diversity among human beings, so it is likely a spectrum of outcomes rather than a binary all or none response. But the one thing that we can say is that